Hey folks, you're watching Eddie the Thinker. My name is Aditya, aka Eddie. Today I wanted to upload another video, but then I saw this in the news.
The story begins in Philadelphia, America. It's October 13th, around 11 p.m. on a Wednesday, typically busy times, especially on public transport. A woman boarded the local train run by SEPTA, that's the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority, SEPTA. Now listen closely to what happened next. A 35-year-old man came around and sat next to this woman. He tried to strike up a conversation. She was not interested. Over the next few minutes, he became aggressive. This is happening on a train, remember. He ripped off her clothes and sexually assaulted her. And this went on for 8 minutes. 8 minutes in a public train compartment. Was it empty? No, it wasn't. There were several people on board. They saw what this man was doing. They saw this woman being assaulted, but they did nothing.
It is important we address this issue now because this is not the first incident of its kind. I'll give you two more examples. The first one is the murder of Kitty Genovese. Kitty was a bartender living in New York City. In the early hours of the 13th of March 1964, as Kitty returned home from work, she was brutally murdered. Many neighbors heard her cries for help. Some of the neighbors even witnessed the incident, yet no one called the police. No one came forward to help her. The second example is closer to home. This happened in India. Narendra Kumar, a 35-year-old man, was hit by a car around 5 p.m. as he was returning home from work. He was flung onto the footpath and was unable to move. He was finally assisted the next day, 12 hours after the accident. During the 12 hours, no one came forward to help him. Worse, those who did stop by stole his mobile phone and 12 rupees. Did you notice a pattern? Now, I'm sure you've heard of safety in numbers, but here, despite the presence of onlookers and bystanders in each scenario, no one came forward to help. This is what psychologists call the bystander effect. The bystander effect, also known as the bystander apathy, is the finding that greater the number of bystanders who witness an emergency, the less likely are any of them to help. In other words, people are less likely to provide the needed help when they are in groups rather than when they are alone. Now, the reason why I included the murder of Kitty Genovese as an example is because that's the incident that led psychologists to study this phenomena now known as the bystander effect. It is also the incident that led to the creation of the 911 emergency reporting system. Speaking of which, going back to the incident in Philadelphia, passengers had access to an emergency reporting system on board the train. And given that everybody has a cell phone today, no one dialed 911. In fact, reports suggest that the passengers were filming the incident. If you're wondering why does this happen, well, in 1970, social psychologists Bibb Latané and John Darley showed that people go through a 5-step decision-making process before they decide to intervene in an emergency. Failure to take any one of those steps means the bystanders would not help. The first step is actually noticing the event. Failure can be due to the person being in a hurry or distracted. The next step is to interpret the situation as an emergency. Emergencies are often sudden and confusing. Bystanders tend to freeze, watching with a blank expression as they try to figure out what's happening. Now, when people start looking around for cues and they see that there's an apparent lack of concern, they assume that the situation is okay. This is called pluralistic ignorance. This is where people think that everyone else is interpreting the situation a certain way, when in fact they are not. The next step is to assume responsibility. Unfortunately, when other people are present, no single bystander feels a strong personal responsibility to act. This is called the diffusion of responsibility. Each bystander's sense of responsibility to help decreases as the number of witnesses increase. The fourth step is to know the appropriate form of assistance. If a person has the appropriate knowledge, let's say he knows CPR, then he will be able to help the person in need. The fifth step is to implement the decision to intervene. Even if the person knows what to do, they might choose to not intervene. This can be due to the lack of a proper qualifications, legal repercussions, embarrassment, or even danger to their life. Now, if a person follows all these 5 steps, he will intervene. Now that we have established the problem, the question is, how do we increase the likelihood that the bystander would step forward to intervene? Simply being aware of the barriers to helping people in an emergency can increase the person's chances of overcoming those barriers. In fact, studies have shown that students who did provide assistance in an emergency revealed that they recall learning about the bystander effect in an introductory course to psychology. It is natural to hold yourself back. Perhaps you fear doing something wrong in public. But with your knowledge of the bystander effect, fight those inhibitions, don't hold back, and provide the assistance when needed. Folks, please share this video. Let the content be available to people around the world. Let us ensure that the incident in Philadelphia is not repeated.